Okay, we're going to start this thing. Anybody who logs in late, they can watch the video because we're recording this, and we'll post it to the site soon after. So if there's anything you guys want to watch over again, that'll be available to you. I'm Fitz, and I'm sitting with Paul, and this is our very first webinar, right?
Very first webinar.
So thank you guys all so much for joining us. The whole point here is to provide some value to our MISys friends. The first webinar concept we came up with was extending MISys manufacturing. And the point of that is not everybody knows everything about MISys. Everybody here with MISys may be wondering sometimes, geez, I wish I could do that thing in MISys. Oftentimes we find that MISys does that thing. And if not, there are other options too for how you can get more out of your MISys manufacturing software system. So that's what this whole thing is about today. Let's jump to the agenda. Uh-oh, technology problem. Brilliant. Okay, agenda. Oh, by the way, if you guys have questions, please, because everybody's muted right now, so we don't have issues. So if you have questions, please enter them into the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them during the webinar. And if I miss any, then we'll get to them. I'll reach out to you afterwards. Okay. So today we're going to talk about MISys out of the box. We're going to talk about SQL Server reporting services, something that we use a lot. Barcoding. Both the old version of barcoding and the new version of barcoding. We're going to touch on the MISys API, and if you don't know what that is, you're about to find out. And we're going to cover some of the applications that integrate with MISys that we've built here at Central Nervous Systems. These are just some examples, and we'll talk more about that later on in the webinar. So first, MISys out of the box. So most of you probably already know that MISys has, what is it, 10 add-on modules to the basic manufacturing module. Nobody on this webinar will have all of them. I don't know anybody who has all of them. The basics are purchasing and advanced production. Most of you would have material requirements, planning, shop floor control. The point is, you're probably only working with anywhere between 3 to 5 MISys modules, and in a lot of your cases you would have bought MISys a long time ago, so you may not remember, or maybe you weren't around when the company bought MISys, but there are a lot more modules than what any of you are using. And so the first thing you want to do if you're asking the question or wondering, geez, could MISys handle this particular requirement of mine, is we want to look at the existing functionality in MISys and see if there's a module that you should be using that you're not using right now. And you know, we're the ones that you can ask, you know, what does this bin tracking module do, or what does this mobile push alerts module do? We can explain all that for you. So really, you just got to ask us, hey, I got this thing I want to do, and can you guys tell me how I would best accomplish that? So existing out-of-the-box MISys functionality is the first thing that we would look at. What is this? Let's move on.
All right.
Oh, SSRS. Okay, we jumped right into SSRS. So SSRS is an acronym for SQL Server Reporting Services. It is a free business intelligence tool that comes with SQL Server. It's something that we've been using quite a bit lately in the last few years. It's really handy. Well, number one, it's free and I'm cheap, so I like that. It allows you to connect to multiple SQL databases, pull all that information in and manipulate it in the forms of reports and dashboards. The way that we typically make those reports and dashboards available to the MISys users or people not even using MISys in your company is through your company intranet. So if they get on a machine and open up a browser, they can get access to these SQL reports. And there's a lot of really handy things that we can do with SQL reporting services. And we've got a few examples to show you here. Did I say everything I needed to say?
I think so. One of the key things that people will be interested in here is that it's going to use your network security so that you can have some very high-level reports that are only seen by the plant manager or the owner. And you can have some very detailed reports that you can make available to everybody in the company, just depending on what you want everybody to be able to see. And so we use the Windows security features in order to provide access to those SQL Server reports. And the only way that at least the only way that we've been deploying reports with SSRS has been with a browser. And so basically, you know, if you have the rights to get on there to see a certain report, then you type in your login and password, and it lets you into that place. Or if you're set up properly, sometimes you can just go there and you can just see those reports you're allowed to see.
No MISys user license required. You don't have to have MISys open. This is all through SQL. And so you could have a monitor on the shop floor that shows information that we've pulled into a SQL report. So let's look at some of the examples of SQL reports that we've created for MISys users.
Yeah, so we've put together a couple of examples here. The first one that you're seeing here, this is a finance dashboard, and this is just so that somebody from the finance side can keep an eye on some financial information. And in this case, what you're going to see here is you'll see that on the left-hand side of the screen here, there's actually a raw material inventory number, 21 million. Somebody's got a little more inventory than they should have by the looks of it. But it's also got some other information. Now, these guys don't happen to have finished goods inventory or WIP right now. But they do have POs that have been received but not invoiced. And for those of you that have been working with us or working with Shaw from the shop here, you probably know that that's one of the numbers that we try to match up against one of your GL accounts. We have a miscellaneous items received not invoiced. We got an outstanding PO. So there's a bunch of information that we've pulled onto the screen here. Now, the good thing about SQL reporting services is all of these items that you see on the screen here, they can be clicked on to give me more information. So if, for instance, I was to click on the POs partially received greater than 5 days ago, which you'll see in the on the right-hand side of the screen there, items partially received greater than 5 days ago. If I clicked on that, I would get this, and it would automatically bring up the details of that. It's telling me who the supplier was, what purchase order number it was. There could be more than one, as you can see on the screen here. And then it gives the details of those particular items. And we'll find that those all add up. If you get to the bottom of the report, they'll add up to the number that's on the dashboard. So that's one example there. If I move to the next example, this one is more of a purchasing dashboard. And here it's got, you'll notice that the items with quantity below 0 is green. For those that have their negative inventory turned on, we always want to make sure that that number is green. Items without a project on their purchase order for a company that, for instance, is always managing and every single item that's bought should be to a project. This is something so we can make sure that we don't have anything out there that's problematic. And items with quantity less than reorder level is a good example. And that's the one that if I was to click on that one, for instance, that would take me to a different report, and that would be this one. And here it's showing me what all of those items are that are below our reorder level. So that's just, those are a couple of examples of the SQL Reporting Services reports. One of the things to note here is that we have the ability to pull in information, for instance, from your Sage 300 database, from your, if need be, from your QuickBooks database. We have the ability to amalgamate information from different places and then display it together. So
if you have questions about SSRS, call us. We got to move on because we got a lot of slides to get through.
Exactly. So we're going to move on to MISys Barcoding, the original version. The original
MISys Barcoding module. Some of you are probably familiar with this or have the Workdata hardware. This has been the option with MISys to barcode for years now. It's prior to the new XT, the EXT, which we're going to show up here next. This barcoding gun comes with you could do it's connected with MISys, and then there's the download, right? The 5000 series and the 7000 series.
Yeah, one of them, the one that's on the screen here. This one, you actually go out, you do all your transactions, and you come back to a base station, you plug it in, and when you plug it in, it then routes all those transactions into MISys. There's another
7000 series.
Yeah, there's another series of hardware that you can use with this, and what it does is it communicates wirelessly with the base station, and so when you're doing your transactions on the unit, it's actually posting them in real time in MISys and giving you feedback if there's any issues.
Moving forward, anybody looking to do barcoding transactions are most likely going to opt with the new MISys module, MISys application called MISys Manufacturing EXT, and that's next. So MISys has developed an application exterior to MISys Manufacturing that you use on the shop floor with any PC, tablet, smartphone, anything that can access the internet, and runs a browser. It works with iOS, it works with Android, and it's the latest, greatest thing out from MISys.
Now, just one thing to mention here is that iOS and Android are for portables. You can use a Windows-based browser, one of the normal ones, IE or Firefox or any of those, on a regular PC or tablet.
What about Mac browser?
Yep, works too.
Okay, that too. Okay, good. So the MISys Manufacturing EXT features, we've got a long list here. A lot of what you see here is what you were able to do with the barcoding module with the Worth Data hardware. Item transfers, you can do starting and stopping of production orders, and so on. So all the regular things that you're used to being able to do with the barcoding module, with a few additions. Far down the list here, you can see unique to MISys XT, you can manage multiple active operation timers as part of shop operations processing. So essentially that replaces the labor tracking module to enable you to track time against production orders. Also, you can print barcode labels, and we get to, with the Zebra printers that work with this module. And there was something else. Oh, the bottom one too. Transfer quantities of items to sales or vice versa, as well as sales transfers as a part of work order or manufacturing order processing, and that works with QuickBooks Online, Sage Intacct, and Sage 300 ERP. So it's a little beefier than the old MISys barcoding module.
Yeah, and it's worthwhile noting that your on-premise QuickBooks and your on-premise Sage 50, while it will work with MISys XT, you will not be able to do sales transfers with it yet. I'm not sure if they're going to change that in the future, but as it stands today, you can't do that.
Okay, let's have a look at it.
Okay.
Okay, so should have mentioned this earlier too. Yeah, we can go next one. We are not demonstrating any of the applications that we're showing you here today. We're giving you sneak peeks. They're screenshots just to give you a sense of what they look like and how they work. That's all. If you want to see any of these things in detail, you can get in touch with me afterwards. Okay, so EXT.
So the user interface here, basically what we did, we just took a handful of screenshots so you can see what would be on a mobile device. So the first one here, this is when you go in and you've actually, this is auto order. Or sorry, no, the one on the right actually where it says navigation there. It was on the dashboard when we came in, and when you actually tap the production with your finger, if you happen to have a touchscreen device, it will bring you to the item on the left where it actually allows you to put in a work order, manufacturing order, something like that. Down on the bottom, you can see that you can choose between I want to enter a work order, I want to enter something for manufacturing order, or I want to start or stop an operation timer, and that's what that one's for. And so if I take a little further, I went into a manufacturing order here and I said, I want to start a manufacturing order. And after I did that, it then took me to a screen that said, hey, what operation do you want to start on this manufacturing order? And that's what, it allows you to go through that with just a few taps of your finger. And you have the ability as you're using this, when you're trying to look up that manufacturing order, you can scan it instead of entering it and choosing it from a list. Same thing with your operations. You can scan that and that will bring up that operation instead of having to type it in.
Yeah.
So it makes it so it's a little bit faster for your shop floor guys. If you've got folks that are reasonably technically proficient, they can go down, they can actually do their own transactions. You can get in, you click on the start to do a start transaction, and you can do or you can do things like transfers to WIP, which is what we were doing here. We did a start, we chose 20 as our quantity, and then we click transfer. That's actually going to start 20 for this particular manufacturing order. And so it mirrors the process that exists in the regular MISys application. It's just that it's done with fewer clicks and it's a little bit more intuitive, and you can use a touchscreen to do it.
So point is something new from MISys. If you want to get into shop operations using mobile devices, you can check out this link here, MISysinc.com/EXT. You'll get a whole bunch more information there. I'm thinking I gotta ask if they're gonna post a video on that. I know they posted a video just for partners, but I don't know if there's a video up there for customers yet, and so I'm gonna look into that.
Yeah, but what I will say is that that's probably the most cost-effective way these days for you to get into mobile transactions on the shop floor. The Worth data terminal system was robust, and those units were they could take a lot of abuse, but they were also relatively pricey.
Mm-hmm.
You can go and get your own hardware as long as it's compatible. Then you'll be able to run this, as long as it'll support a browser.
Yeah, one more slide here with some technical requirements. You should
Right.
know that you need, if you go with the XT, you need to buy a license for MISys XT, and you need to buy a license for the MISys API, which we're going to get to that in a second. Each login session, everybody out there running MISys XT on a device, they also need a user license so they can connect to MISys. So that's something to be aware of as well. I said earlier that you have the ability to, there's on-person printers with this Zebra printers. So either on-person or stationary printers work with this. And it's compatible with Bluetooth scanning devices. So if you have a Bluetooth scanning device that can operate with your tablet, that works as well. Any more details, you can find them on the MISys website, MISysinc.com/EXT. So let's move on to, I think we're doing good for time.
Yeah, we're in the chip.
Let's move on to the API, MISys Manufacturing API. What is an API? API is application programming interface for anybody who doesn't know. It's a software-to-software interface that enables two applications to exchange data between each other. Essentially, it's something that MISys made available so anybody who wants to write applications like we do that trade information with MISys Manufacturing, it's a way to do that. Why do you need to know about APIs? Because if you ask us, does MISys out of the box do X? And we tell you, no, sorry, it doesn't. Well, you have options. Like we said earlier, we have here created a number of applications that work with MISys. So using the API, or sometimes accessing the MISys database directly, we've developed a bunch of applications to enhance MISys functionality. Now, we've created a lot of apps for individual clients that will never get used by other clients. In fact, that's mostly the case. Somebody has a functional gap, something they really need to have happen in MISys, or maybe it's something that MISys actually does, but they need it done differently. And the only real solution is for us to create an application to do that for them. Like,
yeah, a real sweet spot for this type of application work is that in a lot of cases, MISys does something and it does it really well. But there's a lot of clicks involved, or there's a lot of, I got to enter this, or I have to do serial lot assignments, and there's a lot of them, and I have all the numbers in a different database somewhere already, and I just need to apply them to the lot. There's those types of things where there's just a lot of entry that's required, and what the client wants is for us to simplify the entry. So make it so that my guy on the shop floor just needs to, scan the MO, scan something else. And then I want to put the quantity that I worked on here, and I want to click start, and that's all I want the guy to do. Because otherwise, you got him out there, punching buttons and doing stuff, and it takes a long time, and time is money. So that's kind of the sweet spot in a lot of cases when it's not something that MISys just doesn't do, and/or we need to connect something external to MISys into the MISys program.
Now, these apps that we're building are web apps. They've all been web apps, right?
Most of them have been web apps.
Meaning, it's on your company intranet, it's on a browser, and it's just like using a web page. But everything that we make is very basic, very simple, and frankly, not pretty, but it gets the job done. So we have, however, created some applications that are for requirements that are common to a lot of our customers. So there are actually a handful that we've made that more than one customer has found useful. And we're going to spend the rest of the time on this webinar looking at 4 of those. 4? Yeah, 4. What's first? Shop operations mobile. So you can read this if you want, or you can watch the video later and pause it. But essentially, Paul, this does.
What this does is this just makes it so that we can show progress on the shop floor while collecting time in a really easy manner. So this, for instance, is something that the MISys XT program will do. It's just that it takes a lot more interaction with the application to do it on their system. And we happen to have more than one client who said, you know, I'd really like it if you can make it so that this doesn't take all this work for the guy down there because there's too much room for error. And so we said, fine, here's our solution to this. And so here's a handful of screenshots for Shop Ops Mobile. The first one, we'll show you the homepage first, and then we'll walk through a handful of them. One of the things you're going to find is that, you know, we are not web designers, so it's not pretty, but it does work.
Mm-hmm.
And so you notice here, you log in, there's a home page. It's only got a couple of things you can do, so it's hard to get lost. You come onto the operations screen, you start scanning. You scan in the employee badge, right? That puts the right person up there. You scan in the manufacturing order number, the job number, that pulls up the job that you're working on.
Which is a barcode on your traveler.
Yeah, should be a barcode on the top of the traveler, and the operation, and you scan that as well. When you scan that, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to ask you if you want to start, or it's going to ask you if you want to stop. And in this case, we have Dean, one of our guys out in the shop here. He's going to receive something. We don't know what it is, but he's going to start working.
And we know it's spelt wrong.
And we do know that receive is spelt wrong. We're not sure why, but it is. Anyways, so Dean goes in, he clicks the start button. And when he clicks the start button, that's going to start a timer. Flash forward a little while. Dean goes in, he does the same thing. He scans his badge, he scans his MO, he scans his operation. System recognizes that he's already logged onto the job. And because he's already logged onto the job, the only option he has here is to end. So you notice we're not giving him a lot of options here.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it's because this is for people that start and stop, and they do the quantity that's on the MO, and that's all they do. So we're not trying to start, 5 of 20. We're just starting the process. So he clicks the end time, and that's going to actually show that he's been clocked out successfully. A little green message up there to let him know that he's done. Now, what happens in MISys, if I was to pop over to MISys, what I'd find is that receive operation, it booked 18 minutes because Dean happened to be in there for 18 minutes when he was doing that. And that's what you see on this line here. So a couple of things that we had to add, just because, guys make mistakes, is we added an admin screen here, and it will pull up a list of manufacturing orders.
There's only one on here now.
There's only one on here now, but normally there's more than one. And those are operations that are in process. And this is something that the supervisor should be reviewing before everybody goes home, just to make sure somebody's not logged in. And in this case, you'll notice that it's got the date and time that the person clocked in on the screen, and it's also got the current date and time. Obviously, this is a couple days ago. Well, it is pretty close to 11:25. And that allows you to change it just in case it's been over the weekend and you want to go back and say, this guy actually finished at 1600 on Friday.
So you can go and edit the time on that field and end it at the appropriate time if you need to.
Correct, yeah. And so that's Shop Ops Mobile, super simple. There's probably a handful of other things it does, and I think there's a video online somewhere that shows how it works.
I think Eric and I shot a video.
So, if you need to see that, get in touch with Fitz and he'll show you what's going on. Next.
Before we move on, I just want to say, Sherry, I see your question. I'm going to get in touch with you afterwards because that's going to require me to draw a little bit more information out of you, and we only have 4 minutes left to do this thing. So I'll get in touch, okay? So next, landed cost.
Right. So landed cost. Landed cost is something we get asked about pretty regularly because a lot of manufacturers would like to have the shipping and brokerage, whatever it is, baked into the cost of the item when it goes into inventory. It's not something that MISys does. And so we build an application, and what the landed cost application does is it gives us the ability to use the additional costs tab on the purchase order, where you can go in and put in your brokerage and you can put in your shipping costs.
And that already exists in MISys.
It's all part of MISys as it exists today. it will allow you to prorate those costs across the items that are on that purchase order. And once you've done that, and that's typically done by somebody in purchasing earlier on in the process, then when the item actually arrives, as long as you filled in the additional costs, it gives you the ability to do a receipt. But because we're doing a receipt in our application, our landed cost app, what it will do is it will allow the system to go and use that landed cost as the cost of the item on receipt, which means that it goes into inventory at the landed cost, as long as you're not on standard costs, in which case, of course, it's not going to do that. So, what does it look like?
Pretty simple.
It's pretty simple. It's not pretty. And it's also, again, you know, we don't have a lot of options here. It does one thing, and we try to make it do it well. So basically, you get a login screen, go through the login process. Now, this is using your MISys login ID and password. Okay. When you log in, you get a screen that's got your options on the top. I can do a receipt, I can do a return, or if I happen to be an administrator, I can set the roles for the various people that are using the system. And so we'll look at roles. Actually, sorry, we're not going to look at roles first. First, we're going to look at that additional cost. We're just going to look at the additional cost tab, just in case people haven't seen it before. And so what you'll see here is you'll see that you can go into the purchase order. If you have additional costs turned on, then you're going to have this tab show up called additional costs. When you're in additional costs, you can put in things that are related to the purchase that need to be allocated to the items. You put the amounts on there, and then you go through a process that you use to prorate those costs across the various lines on the purchase order. And so you'll see in here that there's an extended price on line 1 of the purchase order at the bottom there of 1,000, and there's an additional cost on top of that of 800. And so we prorated the $1,400 across the 2 lines. Now, if I was to hop over to my application, what we're going to see is we're going to see that on the receipt screen, the receipt screen is actually going to give me those 2 lines. I give the quantities, and then you're going to get the PO price showing, but you're also going to get the landed cost price so that you know what's actually going to hit your books. And also what you're going to see is that you have a choice between looking at system units or purchase order units, depending on how you want to do it. So it mirrors fairly closely what you would see in MISys. The only real difference is that when I go in and I use this, it's actually going to use that landed cost price for the price of the item. So after I do that, I get a nice little reminder that says, hey, I did that receipt and everything was successful. If it's not successful, you know, there's some kind of a problem, then it will actually pop the error message, and it'll be the exact same error messages that you see in MISys, because we're actually using the MISys API to post this transaction, and we'll get back those same kind of pieces of information. All right, so.
Got questions? Give me a shout. Okay, we're moving on to web rec. And I reckon we're going to go over here by about 3 minutes.
Right.
So if anybody has to jump off, go ahead. I'll make sure there's a video up for you to watch to see the ending, okay? Web rec. It gives you the ability to use requisitions.
Yeah, so basically with web rec, what web rec allows you to do is it allows you to pick items that are on the in the MISys list, or to enter non-stock items, and request those. It goes to your supervisor or whoever is your approver, and that approver has the ability to say, yep, that person's allowed to buy that if it's over your limit, right? If it's under your limit and the system is set, it may go direct to the purchaser. But what it does is that then it takes that item. If it's been approved, it goes to the purchaser. Purchaser has the option to then pool all the different requisitions together and build purchase orders based on those. And so if I was to go have a quick look at the interface here, again, not that pretty.
Nope. We're
not designers, but it does work. And here again, you're logging in with your MISys username and password. What that's going to do is it'll bring you into the web rec program. Now, one of the things that you'll notice here is this is the role screen. This is set up so that each person can only do the things that they're allowed to do. And so you can't requisition unless you have requisitions checked off on your user on this screen. You can't buy unless you have the check for buyer. You can't adjust these roles unless you have roles checked off. So basically, this is just some simple security to make it so that people can only do what they're supposed to. Here, you also set the approver for the person and what their limit is. So then you go into the requisition screen. You decide what you want to requisition. You can search by the reference number. You can search by a supplier that supplies that type of item, or you can just do a general search. It brings up a list of items. You hit the arrow on the left side there, and that adds it to your list. After you've added a couple of things to your list, and they just get put onto the bottom of the screen, you have the ability to edit them if you want more higher quantity or lower quantity, or you want to change the who you're buying it from, that kind of stuff. You have the ability to make changes here. You'll notice there's a required date down on the bottom. There's also a little green circle down there that lets you know whether or not I'm over my my limit yet. Because once it goes over my limit, it's going to go to my approver. So if I'm happy with that, I click the Post Requisition button, and that's going to take me take the requisition to the buy screen. And so then the buyer can actually see it and go to buy. Now we're approved. This particular person, when they submitted underneath their approval limit, so it went directly to the buyer. Buyer can go in here. They can also search by reference, location, or supplier, so they can amalgamate purchase orders together. They go in, you'll notice that it says buy, reject, edit, hold. They got lots of options for modifying this. But when they click that buy all button at the bottom, or they click one of the buy links that are on the left side of each line, it's creating a purchase order in MISys with that information on it. And it will put the information for the same suppliers for the same location together, so that you don't end up with a ton of purchase orders that you don't need. It does a bit of work in the background.
Consolidation for you.
To consolidate for you, that's right. So then you click the buys. Then what you get is you get a screen you get a message that says buy was successful. And over in MISys, what you'll find is that if you go and look in inactive POs, you're actually going to get a purchase order for that person, for that company, for that item. And in this case, because it was two different suppliers, there were two purchase orders created. So we're over by 3 minutes, and we got one app left.
One app left. We're going to rifle through it.
Bear with us. We're going to get through this fast. That's the Hasip app.
Hasip, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point. This is for you food manufacturers. Well, I'll let you. You're more eloquent at this than I am.
I don't know if either one's going to be eloquent, but anyways, what it does is it allows you to record the information from your various tests that are specified in your quality control program in the MISys system. But it does it on an app so that you can collect it at the point that you're actually doing the work. And so if I was to hop into the Hasip app here, you're going to find that, again, not that pretty, but hopefully, it works really well. What this system does, in this case, we scanned in, we chose a station. It happened to be cooking one that we chose, and then we have some manufacturing orders on the screen. We can tap one of those manufacturing orders. That's going to take us into the MO. When we go into the MO at that station, it's going to give us the ability to say, what lots I was working on here, so I can actually specify the lots. I can put what quantity and add a comment, and then I can post the lot. And down at the bottom, I can also post my material tests for that particular station for that particular manufacturing order and batch. And so I can put my cooking start time in there. I can put my temperature and my cooking end time in there. And so what this does is it just allows us to go through, put that in. If I click add, it then adds that to our database so that we can then query that later, make sure that nothing's out of spec. And
report back on this information quickly.
Exactly.
If you get audited.
There's also the ability here to add comments. So if you fail a test, you can put in there why you failed and what happened. And then if I was to go a little further in the process, here's the comment, right? It actually says cooking start time, test recorded by so-and-so, right? And I can type a comment in here and click add. That will add that comment to the record. Now, a little bit later on, as we're progressing through the unit, you'll actually see that, as the person goes in, you can see the various things that have been logged against this particular manufacturing order. And as you work your way through, eventually you get down and you'll get to the last thing that you're going to work on, and there's a finalize button that allows you to finalize that order. So that was a really fast view through there. It probably didn't make a ton of sense just because we're trying to give you a flavor for what it does.
Not a demo, just giving you an idea of what you can do in MISys, and which leads us to, are you sure MISys doesn't do that? Quick review. First, you want to look at what MISys functionality exists out of the box. We don't expect you to know that. Give us a call. We'll help you figure that out. If that's not the solution, there's SSRS, which is a really flexible business intelligence reporting tool. And then there's apps. Maybe one exists, not likely, unless it's one of the 4 that you saw there. Or if it's important enough, maybe we can make one for you. That's it. Thank you all for joining us for our very first webinar. If you have questions, need more information, you all know how to get a hold of us. But it's here on the screen too. And that's it. And we're going to be doing more webinars in the future. So look out for those. And I hope you'll join us on that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, folks.